you. Hi, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. My name is Bex. I'm on the events team here at Books Are Magic, and we're so excited to have you all here to celebrate the paperback release of Dirtbag, Massachusetts. Before we get into that, I just have a few housekeeping notes to go over. We'll be doing a hand-raised Q&A towards the end of the event, so think of your questions, hold onto them tight. We will get them answered. After the talk, Isaac will be signing books in the back of the store. We'll let you know when and where to line up when that happens. And if you're joining us virtually on the YouTube live stream, you can buy a book in the link description. If you're here with us, you can buy a book at our register. If you've already bought the book, you can buy more. You can buy Tara's book. You can buy books for your neighbors and your pets and your friends and your tattoo artists and anyone else you just want to give a book to. It's the holiday season. So a little bit about Dirtbag, Massachusetts. It begins with a childhood that moves at breakneck speed from safety to violence, recounting an extraordinary pilgrimage through trauma to self-understanding and ultimately acceptance. From growing up in a Boston homeless shelter to bartending in San Francisco, from smuggling medical supplies into Burma to his lifelong struggle to make peace with his body, Fitzgerald strives to take control of his own story, one that aims to put aside anger, isolation, and entitlement to embrace the idea that one can be generous to oneself by being generous to others. Isaac, star of the show, appears frequently on the Today Show and is author of the best-selling children's book, How to Be a Pirate, as well as the co-author of Pen and Ink and Knives and Ink, winner of the IACP Award. His writing has appeared in the New York Times, The Guardian, Best American Non-Required Reading, and numerous other publications. He lives in Brooklyn. Dara Westover, our conversation partner tonight, is an American historian. She's an American historian, memoirist. Her first book, Educated, debuted at the #1 on the New York Times bestseller list and was a finalist for a number of other national awards, including the LA Times Book Prize, the Penn Stein Book Award, and the National Book Critics Circle Award. In 2023, she was awarded the National Humanities Medal by President Biden. Without any further delay, please give me a huge hand in welcoming Isaac and Tara. Woo!
Real quick, I just want to welcome people can come in. We got seats here, and also just give a round of applause to Bex and everyone here at Books Are Magic that's making this happen. Now I promise to...
I'm supposed to be in charge.
Yep, okay, I'll shut up.
Is this working? All right, yeah. You already stolen your backseat driver. Hi, Isaac.
Hi, Tara.
How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I feel like your microphone's better than my microphone. Is that true?
Do you want to swap microphones and see what happens? No, I think
this is your event. I'm just noticing. No. It's
I like a social experiment.
Maybe it's your voice is just deeper and better than my voice. Maybe I want wonderful voice. Maybe I want your voice. All right, never mind. Forget about that. We're going to start at the beginning. So your book opens with quite a good line, I think. You say, "My parents were married when they had me, just to different people." Elaborate.
Oh, I will. Come on in, gang. Please, come on in. There are empty seats here. Sit down. Make room for friends. Sorry, we're very social here, so it's okay.
There's 3 here. You might have to walk in front of the camera.
Yeah. Oh, look at that.
You can do it.
We love it. Brave. So just getting started here, the question was, my opening line, my parents married when they had me, just to different people. Elaborate. So my parents both married their high school sweethearts, and they each had a child, and they each had a family. And I think something I don't talk about in the book, but is one of my great theories, is that society is built to make us constantly feel like we're just about to be an adult. And I really think when you're in your teenage years, you're approaching 20, you're like, now's the time. I got to get my act together and be an adult. And then you're in your mid-20s and you're like, now's the time. I got to get my act together and be an adult. And I think my parents were of that age when you're approaching 30, which is probably in most young people's mind the last time where you say, no, 30s, that's it, real adult. And I think they both found themselves in uncomfortable spaces. and maybe looking for something a little bit more. And in that moment, they found each other. But what I want to speak to, and is also part of the book, you then get past 30 and you realize there's a lot of baseball left to play. And that maybe there's never the right time to become an adult, or maybe you've been an adult the whole time and you're just realizing that the world is never going to be settled in the way that you want it to be. But for both of my parents, I think they were looking at a life where they were curious people. They loved books. They loved literature. They loved dreaming bigger than where they were living. And when they met, the next line in the book, I think, is, "I'm a child of passion." Like that's.
I have it here. Would you like me to read it?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of you. Go next.
I was a child of passion, a happy little accident, or put another way, I was born of sin, a mistake in human form, a bomb perfectly aimed to blow up both my parents' lives.
Elaborate. No, that's exactly it. So this is the next part of the story. My parents do make these decisions, and again, I want you to buy the book, so I'm not going to tell you the whole story, play by play. But
or I have a gooder idea. A gooder idea. I have a gooder idea.
Yeah, I love a gooder idea. Educated.
You should sprinkle some. I once signed a bunch of books in San Francisco, like 500 books, and I realized afterward that I had spelled Francisco wrong on every single one of them on a book called Educated. Which is, it's like awkward. Anyway, but I think what you should do, you should tell people some lies, and then they have to read the book to find out what's true.
Wait, I like that. To be honest, some of the book. Well, anyways,
you don't like my idea.
No, I love this idea. But for me, what happened? But that's what you're talking about. Speaks to it directly. I was very young when my parents actually told me that story. Some people might have found that later in life, but I remember some of my earliest memories are me kind of trying to make a little map, trying to figure out. So wait, okay, my brother is my brother, but we have a different father. And my sister is my sister, but we have a different mother. And what does it look? And I remember like having this thought of like a cartoon characters like walking down the road, but then like these two met these two. I just trying to figure it out and make sense of it, because I knew that whatever I was experiencing was different. And that was absolutely, there was confusion in that moment. But the next thing I remember being old enough to understand was like, well, they must have really liked each other. And that's a child of passion, right? And like that's it. In a way, it felt like a gift. It felt like something that I was, I knew that there was so much confusion, and I knew that there was a lot of turmoil in this, but I also knew that these were two people that risked a lot to be together. And even before I think I fully comprehended what that meant, I remember having a bit of pride around that.
Now, you said that when you moved from Boston, out of Boston, that I think you have a line in here. When you moved from the city, you brought your poverty with you. You went from city poor to country poor, which I thought was a really interesting distinction. So you have these two people that, as you just said, they've kind of risked a lot to be together. They've chosen this different life, and then they've relocated out to where your mother was from. Tell me about city poor and country poor.
Yeah, absolutely. On paper, my childhood, the early years, like 0 to 8, should be the worst part of it. 100%.
The worst part of your book.
So just get it's like one of those TV shows where you just get through the first couple of seasons and then it really picks up. No. The worst part of my life.
I'm here to help you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No. The worst part of my childhood. That's right. Like if you look at it on paper, those would be the difficult years because I was living in a homeless shelter. You would think that was difficult. And then after a little bit of time, we left the shelter and we lived in what was basically a halfway house that was run by this organization called the Catholic Worker. It's called John Larry House. But the Catholic Worker is like, imagine everything you love about the Catholic Church. Be good to your neighbors, help the poor, feed the hungry, give your shirt off your back to somebody that's less fortunate to you. It was all of that. It was a socialist Catholic organization. Think of the Vatican. None of that stuff. Eventually, there's some crossover because my mom ended up working at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross, where Cardinal Law worked. That's a whole other story. But my experience at the shelter was one of grace. It was one of joy. It was one of happiness. I was surrounded by so many adults who would take care of me, who were interested. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure to some of them, they're like, this fucking kid again. But for the most part, they were very empathetic. They were very kind to me. So those years were wonderful. Then we move out to the country. And the reasons for that are numerous. Again, I think my parents, as so many people who are parents can understand, it's a hard life to raise a child. You start with such great hopes, and I think in their idea, they were going to make their way in Boston. They were going to be these wonderful people who came out of the shelter, were part of the Catholic community, and were artists, and were poets, and were writers, and they loved it. But eventually the bills get high, things become tough, and there's this other place where they could go, where everything would be less expensive. And my dad needed to stay in the city, is what I was told, for a job. But my mother and I move out. Of course, now looking back, I understand that my parents were having issues that I didn't understand at that time, that nobody was talking to me about. And that's one of the main theses of this book, is just when people don't talk, especially when family members don't talk, when people assume, oh, the kid doesn't notice, don't tell them.
I think you have a line in your book where you say you missed your father the way you miss something you don't know is missing, which I thought was a really nice way of putting that.
That's exactly right, because that's what happened. Me and my mom end up in what should be a better living situation, the woods. It's beautiful. It's rural. I can play. I used to not be able to leave the front of my block, let alone go around it. I got mugged at gunpoint at one point. Like, things were rough in the city. The country should have been like Eden. But instead, it was sad, it was lonely, it was cold. And I want to be very clear. The area we moved to, beautiful. Some wonderful community out there as well. But I wasn't connected to it. And so it felt very isolating, which is something I think you yourself can understand a little bit. But I'm not going to flip this interview. You're going to get really mad at me. Okay.
Yeah, no, we're here to talk about you, okay. Isaac. All eyes on Isaac. Okay. So Catholicism, you had some interesting experiences at the cathedral, and then you had some interesting observations, I think, about leaving Catholicism. And said that, I loved this, that ditching Catholicism didn't make you any less Catholic. And I thought that was, I just thought that was very interesting, and I elaborate. This could be the word of the evening.
No, and I love it. I'll tell a little story. I think I touch on it in the book, but by the time I'm 12, my parents are maybe starting to get their act together. And that's, just for the record, a true story. What happens after this book is my parents go on to really figure things out. And our relationship goes on. Don't get me wrong, there are moments of topsy-turviness for many years, but right now we are very strong. But they are just starting to get their act together when I turn 12, which is, of course, when I decide to become a total shithead. And that is when it is all these, like, just, I was a dumpster bin for drugs. I was hanging out with much older kids. I would just go mad in the woods. I was having so much fun. I was driving cars well before I would have a license or even knew how to drive them. And at that time, I had a friend. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be very careful here, because his name is Connor. His name is Connor in the book. Wonderful friend. He loves the book. He cried when he read it. I can't use his name because he's high up in the military now. But his name is Connor in the book. And I go to Connor's house, and I'll never forget. I'm 12 years old. I'm hanging out with his mother, who was like a second mother to me. I loved her very much. We also smoked weed together. So, different levels of what real care looked like at that time. And I'll never, she's like, Isaac, God doesn't exist. And she said it so casually.
How old you said you were?
12.
12.
And it was a true, like, eye-opening break experience for me. And I realized that, like, oh, I have been just brought up in this thing that I believe in because everyone tells me to believe it. And I would argue, in the book, I talk about Catholicism and where I'm at with it now. But the next, just to, like, for this conversation, the next 20 years. That's something I grappled with. At 12, I was so quick to just be like, yes, she's right. I know that. I'm an altar boy. Now I can steal money from the giving basket, which I did. Bought a lot of bad weed and like horrible cigarettes with it. Like now, yeah, God's not real. Hooray. Oh, Nietzsche, let's get me into that for a little bit. Like, just all this misreading and all this misinterpretation of real philosophy, which is what happens to young people sometimes, right? I was just given information, but thinking that I knew everything. In this book, I touch on it, but what the next book that I'm going to write is really going to be about is this recognition that I never lost my faith. And I am much closer to it yet again. And I know that even Connor's mom was trying to tell me that to like shock me out of this like very compliant way that I was living. But I also know that she herself was an incredibly smart person and also an incredibly philosophical person and incredibly motivated by faith. And I'm now realizing this whole book especially is about me being like, I am not like my parents. And now I'm 40 years old, same age that they were when the real tough stuff started happening. And recognizing that they loved walking, and I now love walking, and that they loved God. And I'm not in a place right now where I can say I love God, but I know that I love faith. And I know that I'm praying more now than I've ever prayed before in my entire life. So I do consider myself a Catholic. That is, I haven't been to a Catholic. I don't pray at a Catholic church. I pray in the woods. I pray next to rivers. I pray anywhere where I can touch water and I can make the sign of the cross. I believe in a lot of the lessons of the Bible, but I also understand that there are many other religions out there. And for me, it's about grappling with trying to figure out what faith looks like to me.
I was listening to a lecture that Hilary Mantel gave, and she was talking about faith and just how much faith has shaped the world and the history of the world. Mm-hmm. And she was saying how she thought to try to be a writer who wasn't brought up with any kind of faith would be hard, actually, mm-hmm. because like there's so much of humanity that you have to try to imagine what it would be like to be raised in a faith community. And if you haven't been, she said she was very grateful that she'd been brought up, even though she had changed her beliefs and had a different relationship with religion at the time she was giving that lecture. But she said the knowledge of how these faith movements and how they work on people's minds and motivate them and the communities that grow up around them and all of the complicated things of being a person of faith, she's always grateful to have that knowledge.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that's most important, right? I think the Catholic Church, rightfully so, got pegged to the goddamn wall on a lot of horrible shit they were doing, and that's absolutely right. And anybody that grew up in my neighborhood or in many other neighborhoods that experienced or was close to that had so much anger. None more than my parents. I remember how upset they were when that all came to light. And that's deserved. But at the same time, we are looking at a country right now where nobody's, I don't want to say nobody, but many people are no longer going to church. And I'm not here to like proselytize and be like, oh, we got to bring that back. That's all right.
That would be a surprising turn to this event.
That's what I'm saying. And no. But I am here to say that I think there was something in community. There's something about getting together in rooms together and singing or yelling. And again, you can comparison I make in the book, very similar to bars, but just bringing people together from different walks of life. Yeah, sorry. But bringing people together and putting them in the same space so that they can actually be together in commune and communicate. I think that's important.
When people ask me what I like about religion, I like to talk about, I think the secular world and secular philosophy, for all of its great contributions, there's something it hasn't totally figured out, which is like, what is the value of a human being if they have objectionable views, objectionable habits, if they're not contributing to the progress of the world, they might even be hindering it. What's the value of that person? And I think the religious world has an incredible answer to that. We're all children of God. We're all equal. There's like that indelible human worth, the soul, right? The language of the soul.
All worthy of love, yeah.
The faith traditions have a really potent, powerful answer to that question. And secularism has not, I don't think, quite really even grappled, and certainly hasn't not given an answer that I found satisfying.
Yeah, or sometimes can make you start to feel a little worthless and start to be like, wait, what? Yeah, why am I? Like, what is the point? That said, I did touch on singing. I'm not turning things around. But you also, something that you found in this, right, was singing.
Religion?
Yeah.
That's true. Did you want to sing?
Touche. I won't ask you to sing. I'll move on. I was going to be like, do you want to sing? You have an incredible voice.
It sounds like you have an incredible voice. I'm listening, and I can hear that your voice sounds...
All right,
Who here would like to have...
No, we'll agree. We'll agree. Next question. We'll agree not to sing.
Should we talk about your body image?
Yeah,
Should we talk about your body?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's talk about your body.
I would love it.
So people, I guess there was a period of your life where people called you these words, and you wrote that they became a really deep part of your kind of ideas of yourself, so much so that even when the weight disappeared, you didn't really notice that it was gone. And I thought that was very interesting and very apt of all the ways that we conceive of ourselves as certain things, or we have stories about ourselves, and then even when the circumstances change, the story may or may not change.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. In a way, it's kind of what I was talking about before with age, where you're getting older and you're like, oh, now I'll be an adult. Now it'll be fixed like this. Now it'll be... I truly thought at one point I was going to I'm going to work hard enough. I'm going to look at my body and just be like, hell yeah. Nailed it. He looks great. And that just, you find out that never happens. I grappled with body image issue. It was very much inherited. My mother grappled with body image issues. I'm very sure that her mother as well did. And you start to see yourself just the way you think of yourself without understanding the changes in your body, which can lead to really unhealthy behavior. And so there's one photo in the book, which is me absolutely when I thought of myself as still extremely big. The essay, for the record, is titled Confessions of a Former Fat Kid. And everybody's like, that's a typo. You got it. And it's like, no, trust me. Not a former fat kid, just fluctuating. So former. Because in that photo, I still thought of myself as very large. And I'm if anything, I'm unhealthily skinny in that photo. I'd been doing a lot of drugs, and I'm very, very, very skinny. And it's not so much about getting to this right spot. It's not so much like, oh, if I lose this amount of weight, or I gain this amount of weight, or if I work on my muscles enough, or I'm able to move in this particular way, that I'm going to be happy. It's reaching this acceptance of, oh, my body, just like my age, just like my life, there is no permanence. I'm a constant, ever shifting, just like we all used to be amoebas way back in the day. We are just constantly moving, changing, and shifting. And it's about trying to become okay with that. And of course, there are healthier ways to live and like less healthy ways to live. But you want to be able to love yourself. And that's still not something I've achieved. I just want to be clear about, like, it's still something I struggle with every single day. But for me, when in writing that essay, the thing I wanted to realize was, I think I see so many other people, and I'm like, well, they must think they're great. They have achieved what I'm looking for. And it's like, no, all of a sudden, if you talk to anyone about that, everyone has this feeling, and are going through it.
Yeah, I think I really liked your observation that your weight and how you perceive yourself, that's when you realize that your weight and how you perceived your weight were not actually related.
That's right.
And I think a lot of us, we have a moment in our lives where we realize our perception and the way things actually are, no matter how objective we think we are, we're not actually. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really good observation.
No, and that's true of everything. It's not just right. It's all these things where I'm like,
I'm right about most things.
No, but that's the thing, right? I think that is truly what we think. And then we recognize, like, oh, there's so much we don't understand.
So you say that you went to boarding school.
I say that.
You do say that. That's
John Ritzman, did I go to boarding school? Yeah.
And that when people ask you how you got into boarding school, that you tell them that you hit Dave with a math book in the face, I think.
Yeah, that's
What'd
the
you
name
say?
I use for that
That
kid.
I hit Dave Stoll in the face with my math book. That's
Yeah.
how you got to boarding school.
Yeah.
Maybe you should elaborate.
Yeah. Okay, so just to walk you through it, I grew up in this very unique situation when I was a kid. But again, when you're a kid, you're like, oh, how unique is this? You don't really know until you look back on it, right? You just think this is the way everybody's living. Then I move out to the woods, same thing. Just for the record, in about a month, I'm about to celebrate 10 years in New York City. That'll be the longest I've ever lived in one place in my life. Thank you very much. Literally at the same address. It's the longest I've ever lived at the same address in my life. But so at basically 8, we move out to the country. I start getting in trouble not long after that. But 12, I really go off the rails. A lot of librarians and teachers and people took care of me and helped me apply to this boarding school. At 14, I leave my home and I get to live at this boarding school. And it changed things for me. It legitimately changed things for me. But the thing that I kind of hold on to is the way in which it opened my eyes up to the world. Because I had lived in inner city Boston. I had lived in rural Massachusetts, but for the most part, I had never been on a plane. I'd never traveled a lot. And all of a sudden, I was meeting people from all over the country, and not just the country, from all around the world. And all of a sudden, we're talking about perspectives, right? I truly was like, I know how the world is, and I know how I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be like a little tough, a little rough around the edges, and like a little charming, and I can make my way through the world. And all of a sudden, you just recognize that there's all these different ways to live, and that people come from all different levels of class. And I remember when I went to that boarding school, I had such a chip on my shoulder. I was like, these kids are rich pieces of shit. As if I was the only scholarship kid. As if there aren't some middle class families that were scraping a ton of money just to get these kids into this. No, I was like, I'm the only one that's ever had it hard, and everybody else sucks here. And then I'd be like, but my friends back home rule. They're the best. They're lost boys. We're just hanging out in the woods. We're the best. And then like 2 years in, you start to be like, these kids are pretty great. They're taking me all these places I've never been. There's all sorts of windows and doors that are being opened for, and I'd go home and I'd be like, half of these guys are still great. Some of these guys, ooh, they do not like the guys I go to school with. And it's not about class. You just start to realize that there are all these different views that you hadn't become accustomed to. And that's when you realize, like, oh, I grew up in a very white area, and all of that was happening. And so boarding school allowed me, and it's something that you capture so beautifully in your book, to recognize like education is a way forward. Education is a way out. And I was lucky enough to make friends there that lasted a lifetime, and people that were like, this kid's a little weird, but like, let's give him a chance. And it worked out.
I can't really talk about boarding school because I have no boarding school.
No, but then you had Cambridge, but that's a whole other. It's like
yeah.
boarding school for wizards.
Yes, I'm basically Harry Potter. I mean, you have this observation in there that it's not just like, oh, now I'm in boarding school, everything's different, and I wear a bow tie. You actually say that when you got there, you realized rich kids did drugs just like poor kids.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought
more.
and I think I even wrote it down because I thought it was so funny. It turned out rich kids did drugs just like poor kids. They did what they could get. And they also did drugs just like rich kids. They did get what they wanted to get.
Yeah. I mean, Ritzman, are you coming on this one with me? Nah, all right. He's saying nah. All right. You should just know that some names in the book, like we've been talking about, are very bland. And that's because I had to make them up because I could not get people's permission. And then some people, like your freshman year boarding school roommate, whose name is John Ritzman, has such a beautiful, perfect name. And then you give him the book and he says, yeah, you can use my name. I don't give a crap. That's great. And so God bless him. But
are you just complaining about everyone who wouldn't let you use their name?
Listen, there are names. If this wasn't live streamed, the names I would say right now and how beautiful. This is why I can't write fiction. World building.
The names?
No, listen. People who write fiction are incredible to me for the world building and the imagination that they have. I record what has happened or my perception of what has happened, and that's so much easier. And the first fact that I can turn to about that is I have no imagination in this space because people's names that are in the book that are great, trust me, that's their real names. When it's like Sam Fitzy, like literally, like one guy I think is like McMurphy McGee. Like it's just they're the worst names, and it's because I'm trying to invent them. But if that wasn't live streaming, the names I could tell you that could have been in this book, they each match the thing perfectly. But sorry,
I have a solution for you.
hit me.
Cemeteries.
Oh,
I've always thought if I was going to write a novel and I needed character names, you can just go to these and some of these cemeteries, the craziest names in the whole world, and they're amazing. And cemeteries.
that is the most important
You're
piece
welcome.
of information that's been spread tonight during this. Nicely done.
I've actually never written a novel, so I don't know how maybe other writers.
You had
Maybe
to
this is common.
you had to make up some names though.
I made up, but I only made up first names, really.
Okay. Did you go to a cemetery for them?
I don't think so. I think I just thought about it a lot. But I do, because it's like cemeteries are the first and last. Some of these first and last names, you just can't make this shit up, you know?
Yeah.
You need a cemetery.
I was walking in Greenwood Cemetery recently, and I found a gravestone that had my own name on it. So that was a real, yes,
Happy
exactly
Halloween.
that. Yeah, happy Halloween. But to get not to get past names and to get to the drugs. Just for a fun little anyone that hasn't bought the book, just trying to tease it to you. There were a lot of drugs at boarding school, like I said, and there were expensive drugs. But one of our favorite freshman year, like you just find out that, like, especially freshman year of boarding school, you're 14 years old, and you're in it's a co-ed school, but it's an all boys dorm, and so we were like in a cinder block. It was just 30 14-year-old boys in a cinder block. Like it's like putting cats in a bag and just throwing it and seeing what'll happen. Like there was one 23-year-old guy who was like supposed to be the dorm. He lived on the first, like he didn't come upstairs. He was just like, that's Lord of the Flies land and whatever. Good luck, guys. Don't kill each other. And so what we took to doing was inhalants, because that was the easiest thing to get our hands on, was Glade down at the local market. So we would walk down to the market and we would just put a towel over the Glade and we just and the inhalants would just take us to La La Land for a little bit, and then we started to become like real, like anybody. Like,
Did you have a favorite flavor?
Exactly.
Are there flavors?
You would have fit in so good at boarding school, because then we became little connoisseurs of it. We started making.
Lavender's my poison.
We started making wine lists.
Breeze.
Yeah, and in case the person's name earlier, who I was saying earlier, his parents are watching, he was involved at all, I promise. But yes, other ones of us, we did these, we made like little wine lists, and yeah, it was.
You're smiling a lot right now.
It was a great time in my life, and we would put the towels over our arms like maitre d's, and we would walk in with like a little
How much of your brain did you kill?
Oh, so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was so fun. And then the best story, which isn't even in the book, which I was reminded about by my friend later, was that we would then dry the towels in the dorm dryer, which just fed out onto the campus. And so eventually, like a junior had to come up to previously mentioned and just be like, you gotta stop doing that. The whole place smells like purple Glade. The whole, like, stop. Just, you gotta wash them before you just throw them in the dryer. It's too much like lemon breeze. Listen, we were bored and young.
Yeah. Hey, no, I've never.
You asked.
I did ask.
You said elaborate.
I did say elaborate. I don't regret it. I
appreciate it.
Do you want to talk about bartending or Burma? This is a multiple choice interview.
Okay, great. I usually talk about bartending, so let's go Burma.
Oh, right.
Elaborate on it. No, in a beautiful.
Oh, do you like a question?
No. I can.
Why were you in Burma?
Great. Nice job.
Did you want a better question?
No, that was perfect, because it ties into what we were talking about earlier. So at about 25 or 26, I'm bartending full time in San Francisco. I end up going to college, but I'd never done like a study abroad, and I still hadn't traveled much overseas. And a person in my life basically says to me, hey, there's this great group you can join, and you'll teach English to indigenous, to internally displaced people in refugee camps on the Thai-Burma border. And I said, that's amazing. But my parents were both teachers. And as we were talking about earlier, young people are kind of you get caught in these, I'll just say it, we're dumb, and we get caught in these ruts. And so one of my rules was, my parents are teachers, I'll never be a teacher. So I said, I'm not going to teach English. Is there anything else going on over there? They're like, well, there's this group. It's called the Free Burma Rangers. It was started by this guy, Dave, who is an Army Ranger. His parents were missionaries in Thailand. And for many years now, they've been taking a lot of drugs get smuggled out of Burma. He takes medical supplies and he tries to smuggle them in. There's a lot of internally displaced people who are dealing with a lot of stuff. And I was like, that's what I'm going to go do. As a dishwasher. I wasn't even a bouncer at that point. Like, I was just like, had no skills. And I got in touch with this group. And the way it ties into our earlier conversation is I get over there, and the thing that strikes me about this group that I work with, which I was like, this is a nonprofit. It's a little more breaking international law than that. But they had faith. They had a strong sense of what they were doing. And, again, read the essay to get the whole flushed out feeling about it. But I remember getting over there and realizing, like, on the one hand, like, this is a lot of meddling. What am I doing as a dishwasher here in basically a civil war? But the other flip side of it is I was like, these people are doing real good. And I know that in their faith, and they didn't proselytize, they weren't spreading Bibles. They literally were just there to help. And I realized, who am I to judge? And so I was over there for a long time. But yet still always kind of I think they, like, I'll never forget, they would just be like, Christian to me. And I'd be like, yeah, Catholic, which wasn't like, I should have just said no, but that didn't seem right. I just said Catholic. They said, good enough. And they would be like, can you pray? Can like do a short prayer. And that is one of the first times I kind of got back in touch with prayer. And I still don't fully comprehend my feelings about the group, but what I do know is that they help people, and I do know that there was a part of me at that time in my life who was jealous of that certainty.
You wrote about that time that you were, at least you had a girlfriend who thought you were fairly self-destructive, or maybe there was a part of you that maybe you were dealing with some of the pain of your childhood through, maybe you moved on a little bit from the Glade or whatever, when you found other things that might be harmful to you, and you were mostly alcohol, I think, if I'm remembering right. And I wonder if you wanted to say anything about that kind of tension that I think we all live somewhere on the spectrum of wanting to be well and wanting our lives to match maybe our worst feelings and working towards that goal. And anyway, I remember that from that part of the story.
I mean, first off, that's beautifully put. I don't even know if I articulate it that well in the book. But that's right. To get back to the opening line of the book, my parents were married when they had me just to different people. I know that that's a charming line. I've known that was a charming. I've been telling that joke since I was like 9. I've always known that it gets a laugh, but I've also known it's a good way to be like, and now I don't need to talk about anything. Like, I'll give you that joke and then kind of flip it and be like, hey, how about you? But once I kind of understood what it meant, I remember feeling a deep guilt about, like, wait, my sister, her dad doesn't live in her house anymore. And my brother, his mom doesn't live in her house anymore. And then when things got rough between them, starting to feel like it was all my fault. And starting to feel like I say, that I was this bomb that blew up not just my parents' lives, but everyone around. Like, oh, I'm radioactive. I'm a problem. But I didn't know how to talk to other people about that. I didn't have a system. As much as people in my life have helped me, nobody in the 90s was saying, hey, man, have you heard of therapy? It's okay. You should maybe think about it. It's.
Would you have been?
No, I would have been like, fuck you, Dropkick Murphys and Glade. That's the therapy I need, baby. No, I wouldn't have. You're right. That's a good point. Maybe somebody tried. Now that you say it, maybe somebody did. But I wasn't ready to receive that level of help or care. And it was getting to the point in my mid-20s where I was putting myself at risk purposely. Even this wonderful group that I did, this work that I did with this amazing group, was more about trying to put myself in a dangerous place. And it's not until later in life when I start doing therapy, and therapy that literally helped me finish this book, because I blew so many deadlines on this, and it took so many different shapes before I realized what it was. It was my therapist that pointed out to me. She said, oh, hey, bars, especially this biker bar in San Francisco. There's a place called the Armory, which you can read about if you pick up the book. The Free Burma Rangers. These are all places you were going to seeking danger. But what you found was community. And what you found was hope. And what you found was actually kind people, even boarding school. Home, the church, places you were supposed to be very, very safe, were the places that when you were a child were dangerous. And so it's like I had this switch of like not understanding what I felt more comfortable in dangerous situations than I did in safe ones. And that led me to a life of what you're talking about, what I write about in that essay, which is I was just drawn towards self-harm with just this little still thread of Catholicism in the back of my head that told me I couldn't do it myself. But maybe I could put myself in a situation where it would happen. And I'm really lucky that enough people cared about me and enough people talked to me to kind of get me out of those habits.
It's a beautiful thought. I think we'll come back to that in the end because I'm very interested in it. But I think we can open up now and do some questions for maybe like 10 or 15 minutes. And we have one already. So go ahead and shout it out. And I'm going to repeat it into the microphone.
Ooh, look at you. Good memory.
Oh, thank you. You know, just for the live stream, but it's not because I want to just echo you.
So, hi, Isaac.
Hi.
I know that you've been touring with this book now for over a year. You've had a lot of opportunities to do events with brilliant interlocutors like Tara and many other people, but also talk to a lot of readers. And I wonder if in the process of talking about this book yourself, but also being able to be asked great questions by different people about this book, if you're thinking about it in a really different way, or if you've discovered something in it that when it came out over a year ago, you didn't even perceive.
So the question is that you've been touring and talking about the book for about a year now, and are there different things that you've perceived about the story now that you didn't at the beginning, or maybe when you were writing it?
Yeah, and again, this is going to be a very heavy, this one of these events. But truly, when I started with this book, I was like, okay, people are going to want to talk family. They're going to want to talk drinking and drugs. They're going to want to talk adventuring a little bit. The thing that surprised me the most was that the Catholic essay is the one that people really connected with. And the most feedback I've gotten as I've gone around or over email has been people wanting to talk to me about that. And when I tell you, like, I love that essay, and I'm really happy to have written it, but I think when I was writing it, if I'm being 100% honest, I was like, well, I need to go long on something. Church? Like, I'm sorry, I wish I could tell you I was like a more brilliant thinker, but like truly, I was just like, all right, what else do I got? And then the way that it connected with people has been so guiding and so informative to me that, one, I think it has built up my own interest in that. And then two, that's my next book, no joke, was going to be about a murder in a bar. And I love this murder in a bar story, don't get me wrong. But then I realized, how many people are going to care about it? People in the city that this bar exists in don't even know about this bar. And like, it's a great bar, don't get me wrong, but how am I going to get readers interested in a bar? And then recognizing, but everybody, I think, has a question about faith. Everybody is, even if they, wherever they feel, even if they feel super secure in where they are with their belief or non-belief, it's something that is part of every person's life. And that's when I realized, oh, I think faith really has to be central to the next project, because what I really realized with this feedback and from everybody else is, oh, this is actually the most uncompleted part of this book. Like, everything else in the book is an essay where it's like, and I knock on wood, but I think I'm pretty good with the suicidal stuff. I'm pretty good with this stuff. The faith is the thing that is the ongoing question.
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, I love the title.
Thank you.
Please elaborate.
Oh, yes. Great
Hold
question.
on. It's a question about the title. We have to live stream.
yeah,
It's a
sorry.
live stream,
Sorry.
Isaac. It's a question about the title. Elaborate.
This is my favorite thing, and it's thank you for asking it. And also, I just want to say I feel like you and I may be related. This is how I dress all the time. I love your style.
Irish Catholic, former fat boy.
Yeah, my man. All right, where are you from?
Brooklyn, New York.
What about? Do you know like family lineage?
Oh yeah, I do.
County Cork?
No.
Okay, all right. So
But they're from there.
all right. I'm County Cork, like all the way down to the point where something else should have probably mixed in at some point, but it did. Anyways, long story short, the title, where did it come from? This is one of my favorite things to talk about because so many people helped make this book happen, and that goes back to a story that's not in the book. But I moved to San Francisco. I get to a place called 826 Valencia. It's wonderful. It's a creative writing place for children, and they have one here, 826 NYC, and I end up becoming very involved with it. But I didn't know that at the time. I'm just 23 years old, and I walk in, and it said book telling and story making workshop. I was like, I'm going to go do that. I love books. And then it quickly became, this is an open house to get volunteers to work with children. And I was like, I do not care about children. I was 23 years old. So I was like, I got to get out of this room. But I knew I had at least a little bit of I was 23, but not that much of a jerk. I was like, if I leave, it'll be terrible. And they talk. And as they're talking, I look around and there are these pieces of paper framed on the wall and they're covered in ink. They're typed up, but they're covered in like pencil writing or ink writing. I raise my hand. I say, what are those? And they say, oh, those are manuscript pages. And they're covered in writing to show the kids that even though writing is a very lonely art, you can give it to a friend, or you can give it to a teacher, or you can give it to an editor or a like-minded person. And they will give you, you don't have to take all the edits. You don't have to take it all, but they will give you thoughts that will make your story better. And at that moment, up until then, I thought writing was a gift from God. You got touched on the head. You either had it or you didn't. I was 23 years old. I'd loved books my entire life. But other than some very bad poetry in high school, I had not ever thought that it could be a career. And that's when I realized, it could be a craft. But it's about finding community. It's about and I want to be very clear. Some people are just blessed with it, and that's amazing. But for me, so many people edited this book, worked on this book, gave me feedback that made these stories happen. And that leads me to, I am driving in a car to Fenway, no joke, going to Boston, Massachusetts, with my friend Jason Diamond, who's a great writer. And I wanted to call this book Asshole Massachusetts. Because my town, where I grew up, was called Athol, Massachusetts. And I'll give you one guess what they called us. Turns out, like, you can, but like they're not going to put it in the front window of Barnes and Noble. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's going to limit your book's reach if you name it that. And I said, they won't let me name it Asshole Massachusetts. Also, for the record, I want to say my publisher, I've told this story before, and they've been like, we would have let you. But Jason Diamond, another author. One of the best parts of this book, for real, is the title. It didn't come from me. He just turned to me and he said, Dirtbag, Massachusetts. And it was like the second he said, I didn't even know what the book was about at that moment. And the second he said it, I realized it was going to be more about my childhood. I realized it was going to be a more personal book than I thought it was going to be. He just said Dirtbag, Massachusetts, and that's where the title came from. Jason Diamond.
When was the last time you read the book?
When was the last time you read the book, Isaac? And what did you think?
This is a great one. Thank you. I read it for the audiobook. And I mispronounce numerous words in the audiobook. And I'm not going to name names. I'm looking at you in a way, but it's not her.
It seemed like you were naming
Hey, well, it
names.
would seem like I was naming. I know, I realize that now. I'm not going to name names, but there are other writers in this room who have told me about their audiobook experience. And there was like a director on Zoom from LA. And there were other people in the room who were like, inflect it this way, or maybe this way, or what about, oh, you didn't catch that. Oh, you skipped a word there. I was in a closet above the Star Diner in Manhattan with a 19-year-old kid who couldn't give two shits less about what I was doing. To begin with, I want to start there. To begin with, I would mispronounce a word. I would even know I was mispronouncing it. And I've always been a huge reader, but you know when you read a lot, but you don't have to say it out loud. Like, albeit for the longest time, I would say that phrase thinking it meant I, apostrophe LL space BE space IT. Albeit, not knowing it was ALB. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, like you're a kid and you're gonna play a game Who Wants to Be It, and you'll say I'll be it.
Yeah, I'll be it. Exactly. So to that point, I mispronounced many words, and I'll never forget. I was like, I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that. I was just waiting for somebody to cut it in up, and he said, "Yeah, you did." I said, "Should I go again?" He said, "Yeah, okay." And I went again. I bombed it again. I know I did. And he said, "One more time?" I'll never forget that. He was invested then. One more time? Did it again. I said it the same.
What is this word?
I said it the same. I can't remember. But all I know, if you listen to the audiobook, you'll catch it. And then he just went, "Yeah, we got it." But I will say, to that point, by the end of the recording, the guy said, "Just for the record, what we usually do here are like Christian eroticas. And I've really enjoyed the past couple of days." So I appreciated that from him. But that was the last time I read the book. And if you listen to the audiobook, and I think it maybe is because I had a 19-year-old in this closet, I'm basically crying by the end. And I was like, "We should probably do that part." And he's like, "No, we got it." And so if you listen to the audiobook, you'll hear me kind of break down at the end. And they just went to print with that because I think he had like a party to go to that night. And he was like, "Guess what? We don't need to come in for day 3. I still get paid. But I don't need to come in." I was like, cool.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any more questions? We got one. Let's go in the back and then here.
I was wondering if you could talk about your relationship with paperback books and why you've been looking forward to this book.
Why do you love paperback books so much?
Books are magic. Can I buy one of these books from you? Yeah? All right.
I bet they would give you one. Or let you hold it at least. Are you about to destroy this book? What is about to happen to this book?
No, it's not. I'm not gonna be that gruesome. It's not gonna be that bad. But no, I love. Like, listen, anytime I remember like I said, I didn't travel a lot as a kid, and I remember some of the first times I do travel as a teenager. Somebody brings me to a place, and you would just see these books that were just beat to shit in the corner of anywhere you went. They were always paperback. And they're almost always a book you wouldn't buy, but then you would end up reading it. Like, I'm pretty sure that's one of the guiding lights on my next book is Bill Bryson, who wrote A Walk in the Woods. I'm pretty sure the first time I read any Bill Bryson book, and now I've read them all, was because I was traveling somewhere and somebody had left, like, a brief history of everything somewhere in a corner. And so what I love, again, paperback, for my publisher, I should say, I love hardcover books, and they're wonderful, and they help drive the industry and profits, and God bless them. But for me, paperback books were what were affordable, and they were this ability to just, I don't even need to stand up. This is what I want to do with a book. Put it in a purse, put it in a back pocket, put it in a jacket pocket. I love walking around with a hardcover, don't get me wrong, but they drag on you. But if I want to go to a bar and just go read for an afternoon, this is the thing. And then the next thing that happens is then you finish it. And hardcover books, you're like, oh, gotta get back to the library. Is it displayed right? Maybe this book says something about me. I want other people to know that I read it. No, paperback book, I just get to be like, hey, man, here. Like, even maybe it's somebody that doesn't want it. Maybe just I'm walking home and they're just like, thanks, I guess. But you get to give them out. They are like paper. In my mind, hardcover books are meant to be owned and kind of respected. Paperback books, why I respect them, are because they are made for adventuring, passing around. You only hold on to it for a little bit, and then it gets to go live a life somewhere else. Now, I will say, I wrote about it for Esquire, and there's a great article if you want to read it. Since I wrote that, I've gotten a lot of emails about people that are like, I have a wonderful paperback library, and you, sir, are doing it wrong. So shout out and respect to paperback libraries. But that's how I like to have paperbacks in my life.
People have a lot of opinions. So
Yeah,
it's just how it is.
It is true.
I think there's one more, and then and then we're getting close to the end. So one more.
Sure. Hi. I got the distinct pleasure of reading both your books back to back.
Whoa.
So, just so, like,
We're ending on this.
Here. So I have the same question for both of you. There's an off-screen moment in both of your stories where you experienced cruelty, and at least the main character in your stories, or the narrator, who's you two, has to choose not to identify with or choose the path of cruelty and chooses kindness in their ways. I don't know if that comes from an institution or a church or a family that brought you up in a way that made you know which part was the correct path for you. But if either of you had an interesting, if that gave either of you an answer for me, I'd love to hear it. 'Cause I enjoyed both of your
The word he's looking for is elaborate. Would you like me to wait, promise me
You go first.
you're going to end it. You ready?
I won't.
No, you're not going to
I'll
deflect on it. You have to
answer.
promise me that you'll answer.
I will answer.
Okay. It's a complicated answer for me, but the way, without this becoming a TED Talk that's going to last like half an hour, is that the same people that I experienced the toughest moments of my childhood with, which I don't need to be obtuse, it's my parents, are the same people who made me into a kind, curious individual. And that's just the God's honest truth. I know that's not everybody's experience, but sometimes you can have moments with people when they're at their worst that change you for the rest of your life, but you also get to have moments with them when they're at their best. And I'm still in touch with my parents, and I love them very much, and we actually have a better relationship right now than we probably have had in a long time. And it's because it's important to me that I always acknowledge that. They gave me a love of books. Even when I wasn't traveling, they gave me this want to go see the world. They were the ones that thought education was extremely important. And they're the ones who raised me in the Catholic worker when I was very young. The most formative years, when things weren't like I just said, those were the best years of my life. That is when I learned the best parts of Catholicism. That's when I learned, be kind, try to help others, give what you can. And the people that instilled that in me, many other adults, many other people in my life, many other friends, many other people I love have helped me be kinder, but I would give credit to my parents.
Yeah, that's a big question, and it does require like a TED Talk length, I think, to really answer. And even then, it's like a beginning. But I would say I don't have what you have, where I would not say that the harshest lessons I learned from the harshest people in my life, I did not learn kindness from them. But I did learn it from other people. And so I guess I think we get wounded in communities with people, but we also get restored with people. I don't think anybody heals alone. I don't think we're built that way. And if you're able to come through it and you have a person in your life who maybe at their worst moments was not safe, but you can tell now they are, and you can heal together, I think that's really wonderful and really beautiful. And forgiveness is an amazing thing. But you might also be someone for whom the people in your life who weren't safe are still not safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, it was I think there was a long time where I thought I wanted to be someone who'd been raised in a happy family. And I think I thought if I told myself that I had been, that it would be as if it were true. You know, like if I was just a more grateful person, or if I was just like I loved my parents more, then it wouldn't matter that it was actually kind of a wreck. And now that I'm older, I feel like you don't have to have been raised in a happy family, but you do need to know the truth of your life. You need to know whatever it was and be able to label it correctly. And the reason for that is so that you can identify it. And I think if you've had a lot of unloving things happen to you that you've labeled as love, what happens is you go out into the world and unloving things happen to you and you're still labeling them as love. You know, you're sticking them.
Or you do them to other people.
Or you do them. That's the other thing that happens, I think, with people who don't process what's happened to them is they become the person that hurt them slowly over time. And so I think it's, but for me, that was a big revelation that you don't have to have had a happy life, but you do have to know the truth of it so that you can go out into the world and seek something different. and know what you're looking for and realize what I've had is actually not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something else. And but that took me a long time. Even maybe after I was writing my book, I think I was still trying to figure out, okay, I need to tell myself the truth and not just tell myself what I want to have been true. And I mean, you have a really lovely line at the end, or close to the end of your book, bit of advice, actually. I think the only advice you give in the book, where you say, do not put off acknowledging your pain. Weeks turn into months, turn into years, and those are years you will never get back. And they stack up, one on top of another, eventually becoming the structure and shape of your life. I think the last word to you, Isaac.
I just really loved what you just said.
Well, you wrote it.
No, not the the part before you quoted me to myself. God damn it. No, I really loved what you just said, but that is I think the most important thing, and that's the thing I'm still working on, because I was exactly the definition of what you were just describing, somebody who hadn't processed and therefore didn't even realize the way they were hurting the people in their lives. And that's tough. That's a tough thing to accept and know that you can't change. But the other part of it is that, like, you can't change the past, but what you can do is try to be a more present person. And that's what I'm doing. Is most of my life I've just been rushing from thing to thing to thing. That's the way of putting things in the rearview mirror. And in my mind, I was getting as far away as possible from the stuff that happened back there. But it's more realizing, being present, like you just said, in community with other people, and also being present with the fact that those things happened and you can't change them, but it does you no service to ignore them. And so that's if I was to add one more piece of advice, and you're right, I really wanted to write this book in a non-judgmental way and not like, here's what you should do. But if I was to add one more line to that, it's just learn how to experience life when you're in the moment, which is something I've been really, really grateful to be doing up here with you right now. So thank you. And
Thank you.
let's give Tara a round of applause.
Thank you all again for coming out tonight. It was so great having everybody. A reminder, if you're still with us on the live stream, to buy the book. A reminder, if you're here to buy the book, if you came in and did not have a chance to check in with us at the front, please do so before you leave. If you bought a ticket, we want to make sure you get your items. And if you didn't, we want to make sure you buy a ticket. Thank you both, Isaac and Tara, so much for being with us here tonight. If you want to line up down the center, my coworker Christina is pointing to where Isaac will be signing books. My other coworker Belle is going to come around and get your names on Post-it notes, so everything is spelled correctly. Thank you all so much, and please don't forget your belongings as you head out.
Come on, give it up for Books Are Magic. Give it up for Bex. And one thing I want to say, thank